Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai, a space where we'll talk about anything and everything surrounding the people that grind through your month-end accounting close.
Hi everyone. Today's episode is my first non-accounting role. Our guest today is Mike Pietrobon, product advisor for Gappify. On this episode, we talk about how a background in accounting can set you up for success in a variety of fields, and we offer some advice on how to shift your mindset to succeed in non-accounting roles. Now, I'll hand it over to our host, Gappify CEO, Jotham Tai.
Hey, Mike, welcome to the podcast. How's it going today?
Good, Jotham. I'm really excited to be joining you today, live from freezing, snowy Vancouver.
Wow. Okay. So you're not in sunny San Diego, which I know is where you're based out of. But hey, I'm excited too because I love probing accountants who have kind of turned the page on their accounting careers and explored new and exciting things. First of all, I want to say, and I've said this in other episodes before, I think one of the beauties about the accounting profession is it gives you so many different skills and exposes you to so many different things that it puts you in this position where you can choose exciting roles outside of accounting. So I always like to start with that because I think Accounting Foundation really sets up a lot of opportunities for people like me and for people like you. So I'm excited to dig in, and I'm gonna toss out a first question to you. And basically it's to talk us through what the evolution was in your accounting career that led you to start thinking about roles outside of it.
Yeah, so I think maybe what would be helpful is just to touch on why I got into accounting in the first place. It's kind of a funny story, but my dad is an accountant. It runs in my blood. And when I was going to school, accounting was actually the thing that I thought I didn't want to do. Like there's my dad does this, a lot of our family friends do this. This is the last thing I want to do. And so when I started going into school, I weeded out other options and other paths and ended up kind of with accounting being the remaining option. And what was great about it is that there's a lot of opportunity in Vancouver, and I knew from my dad and from family friends about a lot of the opportunities that presented themselves by going down the CPA route and specifically the audit route. So long story short, I started my professional career here in Vancouver at PwC, was there for a number of years, and done various industry roles since. Firstly, from moving down to the US in 2015 was when I left PwC and started those first industry roles. But it was very informative, and I'm grateful for that opportunity and the different roles that I did have. I think at some point along the route, why to answer your question directly, like what prompted me to kind of exit the industry is that at some point I personally got to a stage where I felt a little bit run down and maybe not fully satisfied with where my career was going. I don't want to say I felt a little bit directionless, but it had taken a toll on it. And I think despite the fact I had put in, a lot of years of education and money and resources and time, I got to the stage where I just felt like I needed a change. And luckily, being an accountant and being a CPA, there are endless opportunities to leverage the skill set and the education you have and to go in different directions. And I don't actually think I realized that when I fully to the extent when I started my career, but it's been such a breath of fresh air to truly recognize that this foundation and skill set that we learn, in an audit room and dealing with clients, there's so many transferable skills, and so getting to the point where I realized, wow, like I can go in 100 different directions. In some ways, just it empowered me and maybe gave me that little bit of extra nudge to make the change.
Yeah, well, and I think that connects to also one of the points I started off with. I'll dig into this too because I think it's important for our audience to hear. We in an accounting role, we get exposure to all parts of the business, and that's very unique to the accounting function. So you're marketing now, right? And obviously, you're cross-functional with a couple different groups, but not the whole organization. And I think what makes accounting unique, Ian, is when you're responsible for accounting and accounting for business transactions, you have to kind of see the whole organization. And because of that wide foundation, then to your point, it feels like you have like a buffet of like different roles that you can choose from, like after accounting, because you have some exposure or some level of knowledge in those other fields. So I think it's beautiful. So, Mike, I obviously know the origins of how we got connected, and we don't have to get into like the logistics or details, but yeah, as you think about like the product marketing pitch that we, began talking about, like what resonated with you and what parts of that role really, got your attention and excited your interest in that field.
Yeah, so actually, there's a lot of things that are exciting about transitioning into this role. Obviously, this is something that I've never done before. I think just tying back into what you were saying, I didn't recognize or didn't realize before that this was even a route I could go. And what's actually been really helpful for me is to recognize that specifically at an accounting software company, like I have all this background and experience and understanding of accounting that is like truly leverageable in this new role in a lot of roles at the company. But in particular, for me, what I enjoy about where this role is headed is to really create and define a clear message around what our product does, the value add, and having that message communicated externally to customers, but then also to train and teach, which I love. That's something that's very important to me. But have that message and how we communicate that message trained and communicated internally is something that I'm really looking forward to. I actually really like this is not a knock on accounting, but I do think at times the accounting world can be a bit siloed. It can be that you're maybe more in industry, but you kind of stay within your lane. Only accountants know what accountants do. You're a support function that works behind the scenes. No one really cares if things go well in accounting. It's only if things go wrong that there's a significant fire that can't come out. Let's raise this, and then all hell breaks loose after that. But in this current role, I've felt this just ability to collaborate cross-functionally and connect. And it's been great because I'm learning so much that I didn't know before outside of my little kind of accounting globe or world. And it just makes me feel more connected and dialed into what's going on in the company, what's going on in the industry, what's going on, what are different teams building, what are they working on? And part of that for me, like, creates a broader purpose that now I'm becoming just a part of, right? So I'd say in a nutshell, those are the kind of the main things that I'm looking forward to.
Is it fair to say, Mike, that I know like in accounting, obviously we're exercising the analytical part of our brains. Like, did you get like the creativity itch, or maybe is the creativity part of your broader skill set something that was part of what drove you to make this decision?
Definitely, Jonathan. I'm glad that you asked that. So I think as an accountant, the creative side of your brain, I don't know if it's the left or the right, but whichever side it is dormant, right? And it's intentionally dormant because if you start to do accounting through a creative lens, that's a recipe for an audit adjustment, like probably fraud. So I want to say, it's like encouraged that you suppress that, I guess, is maybe a way to summarize. And so now the fact that I have this side of my brain that hasn't been leveraged, at least in my professional setting, and I can tap into that in partnership with the more, I don't want to, logical, rational, like the accounting side of my brain, and partner those together is really exciting for me. And I feel like, I hope there's some untapped areas of that brain that can start to be stimulated. And I'm excited to see like what spawns out what
I
comes out of, I'm sure there'll be a lot of crap, along the way, and
well,
there'll be learning curves, but yeah, I'm
I
excited for that.
want to add to that, but then I want to also talk about and get your thoughts on the counterpoint. But just, and I don't know if this will get you even more excited, but Mike, as you start tapping into that creative part of your brain, new creative things do come up. So I've experienced that myself. So, back in the day, I would never imagine like having any interest in editing videos like for fun, which I like to do. I like to capture footage and edit videos. And there's and what unlocked that was like getting away from the very rigorous, regimented like accounting mindset. And obviously running a business requires you to be more than just analytical. So just I guess more as a heads up that there's, I think when you start like tapping into it, like new things will come up too. So I'm excited for you to experience that. But I do want to talk about the transitional challenges and also just like the general challenges with being in an unstructured role, for lack of a better word, right? So accounting, I always like to, and I've given this advice to others before that are looking to move out of accounting. In accounting, we kind of know what the scoreboard looks like, right? Like we know when we're putting points on the board, we're booking journal entries, we're closing the books on time, we're checking things off. Outside of accounting, there's not a whole lot of that going on. So I think it is kind of frustrating, like even for me at times, like I can't see like direct output of my productivity in as clear of a way as I did in accounting. Like, do you think about that, or is that something that may have been a challenge for you too?
Yeah, it's definitely a, I don't know, maybe it's like a mind shift, or maybe a reset in some ways, is how I've thought about it. Is I obviously, as an accountant, completely agree with you, right? You operate within a set of pretty rigid parameters. You have a set of particular specific tasks that when they're completed, when they're right, it's unambiguous. And so there's a lot of positives and things to appreciate about a system or a job that works like that. But at the same time, I am enjoying now that there aren't processes in place to solve some of these things that we want to get done. There's no clear path on how to get to the outcome we want to get to. And so what I get to do is, again, there's an element of like creativity meshed with problem solving that I can kind of combine into a stew. And then what the output is like, I feel like you can get a lot of interesting and really helpful, successful takeaways or deliverables. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no getting around that. It's a mind shift change, but for me, I'm enjoying that shift.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And along those same lines, Mike, like what are some of the other like new mindset shifts that you've noticed as you're now doing this transition to a non-accounting role?
I mean, there's a lot. I would say that there is I don't know if this is a mindset shift as much as the way that I would think of tackling a lot of accounting problems in the past is there is a framework. You're probably going to do some form of quantitative analysis. You're going to do some form of qualitative analysis, kind of like a case study. And so you think through what you're going to do and how you're going to tackle things through that lens. It's like, I need to do A, B, C, D to get to a decision. And again, I think being in the environment that I'm in now, I mean, there are parameters and guidelines and this sort of thing, or suggestions, but it's very open-ended.
Not as much though. Yeah, it's more open-ended than anything.
Yeah, and so, but it's, that part is enjoyable. Like, hey, there's no roadmap. Like, let's get together, let's brainstorm, let's collaborate cross-functionally, and figure out where we need to go. And so, it's just kind of maybe a tactical difference between the two roles, maybe more than a mindset shift.
Yeah. Well, and it's really not a mindset shift. Sorry for jumping in, Mike. If that's really your, if that's what gets you excited and motivated to kind of work on that and exercise that part of your brain and skill set, it's really not a transition, right? So I guess, and this is good advice probably for the audience, like know who you are, because I talk to accountants who are like, hey, I like structure. I like repeating the same things over and over again with maybe minimal levels of creativity. And if you're that person, then maybe it's more of a mind shift for that person than sounds like in your case that it's more organic and natural. And yeah, I do have to say that both types of mindsets, so to speak, are important to have in an organization. And this is coming from a person now in a role that has to manage a whole business. I think you kind of need both types. You can't have like 100% who are just purely analytical, not creative. You can't like run an organization where everyone's like creative too. So the good news is I think if you're an accountant and you have those different, wherever side you fall, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities within and outside of accounting for these types of professionals.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Jotham. Maybe one thing I'll just very quickly add to that is that maybe as an accountant, it's important to know that there are paths that you can follow if that rigid, structured approach, isn't what you value or what you want. I think a lot of accountants stay in those roles thinking that this is the path that they kind of have to be on. But if it's not, a fit value-wise or, the style of environment that you want to be in, there are other paths and directions you can go. So I just would want to emphasize to people, like, know that you can find a role that fits whatever it is that is important to you, and the way that you learn and the way that you want to work and the environment that you want to be in.
That's a great point. There are other options wherever side you fall on. There are options on either direction that I think, again, like the accounting profession affords you, right? Because you have that great baseline knowledge of just having exposure to different parts of the business, some, fundamental understanding of just general business economics. I think, you have those options and you should know that you do. So that's a great point there. And Mike, as we wrap up, just, and it doesn't have to be, work paper style, but you can throw bullets if that's the most efficient way. But for anyone in the audience that's looking to make some kind of similar shift that you're doing, like what are some good advice that you want to share with the audience around along those lines?
Yeah, so I think the most important for me was not to be afraid to make change. I think it's really easy to get stuck in a belief or a mindset that like what is and will remain the same. And we are seeing, in particular during COVID, there's been this great resignation of people across the country that, a lot of them have been doing the same job or the same unfulfilling line of work for an extended period of time, thinking that there weren't other opportunities, and they were afraid to make that change. And finally, they feel empowered and are starting to almost like having your values reset a little bit. And people, I think, are starting to consider what's truly important to them and better aligning the career path they choose with those values. So I think maybe this is exceptionally difficult as an accountant because, as I mentioned earlier, you've put in, education, a lot of years getting your degree, probably getting your CPA. You've worked in a lot of different environments, all honing, this skill set, and so it makes it more difficult to turn. I don't want to say turn your back on, but to change becomes more intimidating. And so for me, that was a process that I needed to work through. I needed to think through and realize, really, in the end, that I'm not turning my back on accounting if I leave the industry and go into another role. In fact, what I'm doing is leveraging the skill set I got from accounting into a career path that just aligns better with what I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, if the economy is great, yes, they need accountants. If the economy is bad, they also need accountants. Those jobs will always be there. There's a shortage. Like you leaving to try something different is never going to prevent you from going back to that if if you decide that that is what you want to do. So, kind of going back to the main point is just don't be afraid to make that change and to try something different if what you're doing right now isn't working.
That's spot on. In the 20 plus years I've been in the profession now, Mike, the opportunities are there. And I'll add to that. If you do make the choice of and take the plunge, so to speak, and move on from a traditional accounting role, you can always go back, right? So, and that's, from a risk management perspective, that's how I've looked at some of the decisions in my own life. And again, I think that's one of the beauties of our profession. We need accountants all the time, whether you're in a huge recession or not. You can always make some really maybe important decisions like you did to explore something new in your career. But know that you can always fall back to where you were too. But Mike, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation for me. This is always fun for me because I've made the move myself, and just to hear other people's perspectives on, and also the way they think about making these changes has been it's always a pleasure for me. So appreciate you sharing those thoughts, Mike, and hopefully we can get you back on an episode and maybe check in with you 2 months down and get some more advice from a transitioning accountant.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, Joe, and thanks for taking the time to invite me on and gather some of my insights. It's much appreciated. This was a fun experience, and I'm always happy to hop on if I could be of value at any time down the road. So, thanks again.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at Gappify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.